Okay. Before you go down into the comments section and say,
Uh, I told you like the new iPhone, you little Apple sheep.
hear me out. I never said that the new iPhones weren't going to be good. I said that they were boring. Look, most of the things we wanted and expected this year didn't come. No USB-C, no high refresh display, no new design. Look, I was using a Note 10 as my daily driver prior to this phone, the iPhone 11 Pro, which I've been using for a couple of weeks. And when you compare these two phones side by side, it feels like they're from another decade. The Note 10's build quality is unreal. The display is unparalleled. The design language in general feels more like Apple than Apple's own iPhone. Everything about this feels better. And so you might be wondering, well, why on earth is your SIM card in the iPhone 11 and not the Note 10? And that's because there are other things that matter. And despite this being a quote-unquote boring iPhone, it's the last of its generation. The big new design is expected to come next year. And if you look back in iPhones of history, the iPhone 5S was the best version of the iPhone started with the iPhone 4. The iPhone 8 was the best iteration of the form factor that began with the iPhone 6. And this is surely to be the best iPhone of the iPhone design language started by the iPhone 10. And I bet this phone has better longevity than Apple's phone that will be introduced next year. There's a reason I have my SIM card in this, even though it's boring. Let's talk about that. All right, let's talk about this monstrosity, the camera system. Look, Apple was not the first phone maker to put 3 cameras in a smartphone. People have been doing it for ages. And so what makes this one so special, so great? The iPhone used to be king of photography for many years, and then the Pixel came around, and the Samsung Galaxy phones started getting really good. They weren't over-sharpened and oversaturated like they used to be. And in recent years, in my opinion, the iPhone has really fallen behind. The iPhone 11 regains its crown as camera king, at least until the Pixel 4. Why? The new wide-angle camera on iPhone 11 is a lot of fun. It's not a particularly great camera. Many of the images come out softer than the other 2 cameras, and it also has, at least on my model, a slight green shift, which is a little bit displeasing. But in general, the phone is just a blast to take pictures with. There's different framing that I'm trying, different shots that I never would have thought to do with a regular camera lens, and many of them look really good. It's just been a lot of fun to use this camera in general. The overall detail of the main camera lens and the zoom camera lens is improved, not as much as you would think. Sharpness is pretty similar. The sensors themselves are actually basically the same as last year. Where improvements come is in software, and these improvements are massive. This is where Google has had the upper hand. And Apple has made huge advancements in image processing that makes their photos look way better than they used to look on last year's phones. In fact, it's really hard to believe it's only been a 1-year jump since photos from the iPhone XS and the iPhone 11. They're that good. Sharpness and detail in general has improved. Skin tones are way more accurate, with more detail on the face of your subjects. The portrait mode has greatly improved with much better cutting out of the images. I suspect part of this has to do with the third camera lens, but I don't know, because the iPhone 11 still does a really good job as well. And features like the smart video zoom, which make all of the cameras act as one camera, is really cool, albeit perhaps not hyper useful in day-to-day scenarios. What is useful in day-to-day scenarios is the new night mode. Now look, again, Apple was not the first to invent a night mode. Basically, every smartphone manufacturer does this. Some do a really good job, Google and Huawei. Some do a really bad job. Sorry, Samsung. Anyway, the Google Pixel does a really different, it takes a really different approach from the iPhone. Google tries to make really dark images look like they were shot in daylight. And while the results are impressive, they're not really realistic of the scenario that you're actually shooting in. The iPhone 11 takes a much more accurate approach, trying to maintain general lighting. And I mean, look, just take a look at this picture of this chicken that I shot inside of a very dark restaurant. One is almost unusable. We were in the corner of the restaurant. And one makes it look like we're in a relatively well-lit room, although it still respects the idea that this was a photo shot at night. And something that a lot of us geeks and tech reviewers tend to forget, partially because, well, at least in my case, my mug is, it's not the cutest. It's not the cutest. The front-facing camera, or as the kids call it, the selfie camera, does a really good job at capturing more wide-angle photos. General sharpness and color accuracy has improved substantially. Selfies look really good on this phone. Pretty much every iPhone prior to now has gotten really bad. Every Android phone takes a better selfie, or at least they did. This phone fixes that. And I know a lot of us nerds don't care, but that's a normal day-to-day feature that a lot of people use that is going to be a big, massive improvement. So the camera system in general is hands down the biggest upgrade. And it is an upgrade that I think warrants an upgrade in and of itself. But there's one other thing that normal people tend to care about more than everything else, more than display resolution, more than refresh rate, more than all this crap that nerds care about, and that's battery life. Battery life on the iPhone 11 is insane. Speaking of nerds, in order to achieve fantastic battery life, they removed a feature that many of us enjoyed, and that was 3D touch. It's now been replaced by haptic touch, which is basically just a long press on the screen. It is not the same as 3D touch. It is not as good. It is clearly inferior. Software can never replicate good hardware. And I miss it. There's not a day that goes by that I don't wish it was still in here. However, the result of that being removed was a larger battery cell size. And I'm willing to forego that feature that I used to really love for substantially better battery life. Now, that's not the only thing Apple did to improve that. They also created a much more power-efficient SoC with the A13 chip. And then they also created a more efficient display panel. I don't know what they did, really, and no one really does, but the end results speak for themselves. Battery life on this phone is exceptional. Now, this is not the 11 Pro Max. This is the standard small 11 Pro. My iPhone 10 used to get terrible battery life. I was used to okay battery life with the Note 10, but in general, bigger phones have better battery life. This is a very small phone. I mean, well, it's not small, but for smartphones on the market today, this is a small phone, and battery life has been superb. I get just about every single day screen on time of about 7 to 7.5 hours, and that's with mixed usage, watching videos, using GPS navigation. It is insane how good this battery life is. There's really only one Android phone that I can think of that I've used in recent memory that's a flagship phone that gets battery life that's just as good, and that's the OnePlus 7 Pro. But that's a much larger phone, with a much larger battery. This is a small, barely over 3,000 milliamp hour battery. In fact, there was one day in New York where I even got 9 hours of screen on time. This is amazing. You'll no longer have to worry about plugging in. You unplug it in the morning and it lasts till the end of the day. And that's the first time I've ever been able to say that about an iPhone as someone who uses their phone a lot. It is exceptional. And for normal people, it's going to be an absolute game changer. And those are the big upgrades. I mean, look, there are a handful of small quality of life improvements. The frosted glass on the back is, although a little slippery, really nice. There's basically no fingerprints ever on this phone, which is a big plus. Face ID continues to reign supreme. Look, there's a rumor that next year Apple's going to be putting an in-screen Touch ID sensor in conjunction with Face ID. And I don't want to tell them not to do it, but I don't really see the need. Face ID has become even more reliable than it used to be. I have a near 100% success rate with it, and it's super, super fast. It's 30% faster than the iPhone XS, which makes it, in basically every instance, just as fast as an in-screen fingerprint sensor, with much higher reliability and allegedly much higher security. I'm a big fan. Look, when it comes down to it, I'm just disappointed. And not in the phone, but by myself. I shouldn't like this phone. It feels lazy and boring and uninspired. It's almost like Apple isn't really trying to push the boundaries in a world where Android manufacturers are doing something amazing and cool every single day. But do you know what? I have the Note 10. I have the OnePlus 7 Pro. I'm going to have the Pixel 4. And despite having those phones in a drawer very close to me, I have no desire to move to them. I used to feel locked into the iPhone because of iMessage, which I know is not a thing in other parts of the world. In the US, it very much is. But now I feel locked into the iPhone just because it's the phone that always works. It may not do everything new, but it does everything that it does right and better than anything else. And it's the reason why, despite me feeling like it's kind of the best phone on the market, and a massive, massive upgrade from the iPhone XS. Good job, Apple. Just maybe be a little more exciting next year. Well, folks, that's all from me. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like. If you didn't, that other button seems to work okay too. Get subscribed for more awesome tech videos like these, and be sure to hit the bell to enable notifications. But most importantly, and as always, stay snazzy. See you later, folks.